It wasn't until mom's funeral when my oldest brother said, hey, do you guys remember when we were on Amsterdam airport? He said, remember when mom took our hand and she said, we're going to go beg for money for food? And I was like, I blocked it out. My mom was the strongest woman I knew in my lifetime. And she had no shame. She wanted to provide for her family. Fast forward, we come to the US and it's different from South Africa, right? We weren't allowed to use white people beaches. We weren't allowed to use white people bathrooms. And I was so angry with God for taking me away from my friends. I was angry with my parents. 8th grade was hard. They put me back into 8th grade instead of a freshman in high school because they didn't think we could speak proper English, but English was our first language. We were actually bilingual. We could speak both languages. And 8th grade was horrible. These kids were so mean to me. And I remember thinking, I will never make anybody feel like that. My parents would always say, all I can give you is the opportunity for freedom and equality. And Jesus, that's it. The rest is up to you.
From a young immigrant girl navigating racial segregation during apartheid to a bold, faith-filled woman reshaping how we lead people across generations, Leoni Michael has lived it, led through it, and is now teaching it. She's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and executive coach. But she's more than that. She's a woman whose heart beats for connection, for redemption, for restoring what bad leadership tries to break. Her book, Bridge the Gap, Lead the Pack, is more than a catchy title. It's a battle cry for leaders who want to do better. Because when leadership is rooted in service, not status, everything changes. And that's exactly what we're unpacking today. In this episode of The Shift, Leoni opens up about her incredible journey, from family sacrifice to corporate highs to heartbreak and ultimately purpose. We talk real leadership, real resilience, and how the next generation isn't lazy. They're looking for meaning. This isn't theory, it's lived truth. And Leoni, she's only just getting started. Let's dive in.
It's been a while since we've been able to have a conversation, but we've had a lot of conversations over the years, and they've all been fantastic. I know you have a heart for teaching and helping others. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is about you that makes you so amazing and helps you connect with so many different people.
Well, that was a great introduction, and thank you. Very sweet. Who I am really, that's a big question, but a great question. I think everybody should take the time to really sit with themselves and understand who they are and why they do what they do. And then also, like, what is their calling? What is the calling on their lives? I think that is the hardest, most difficult self-reflection question you can ask yourself is, what is my purpose? Because it takes you back to your childhood. It takes you back to those moments where your experiences and just your genetics, right, your DNA, where you come from, that's where you find out who you really are, especially in times of struggle, in times of stressful times, right? In stressful times, you revert back to that younger self and also what has either hurt you or what has lifted you up. But for people to sit in that space and truly reflect on who they are and why they get to do what they get to do, that's what I do. Number one, that's what I do now in my career. But also, I believe I've been doing this throughout my lifetime with people. I just didn't have a name for it. I didn't label it. I just allowed the Lord to use me in a very amazing way because I believe that it is because of Him that I've had the experiences, but also the brokenness that made me who I am today, right? And so I think you and I talk so much about that, your experience as well as mine, and how we get to where we are today. And I think I know that's why we are so good at what we do, Amy, both you and I, because it comes from the heart. It comes from a deeper place than wanting to make a dollar, right? Like yes, of course we want to make money, but it's not about that. It's about the purpose and the passion and the love for Christ that we want to pay it forward and teach other people how to discover their purpose.
I was speaking to someone last week. She said, if God were to tell you the messy middle. So what she said was God shows you the end and the beginning if you listen and you open yourself up to him. But what he doesn't tell you is all the things and the trials and tribulations that you have to go through to get to where he's going to place you in the end. And she said that she believes that if he told us all of that, we wouldn't be as excited about that vision. So I know for me, where he put it on my heart and revealed to me his purpose for my life. And I can absolutely say that I would not have been so excited about it had I known what I would go through. But you said that even when you were young, you were naturally gifted in this area. But did you know that's something you would do with your life as an adult?
So and you know this, I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. My parents moved us to the United States in 1988 during apartheid. And I was 14 years old. And they came with 4 kids. But as we came over, literally with each of us had our own suitcase and we had food vouchers that we could use on Amsterdam airport. That's the only money we had. And my dad was already in the US. He came a month before we did to find us a place to live and to kind of get a job and get his feet on the ground. And I remember leaving that, right? We couldn't even tell people we were leaving. We came on visitors' visas. We applied for political asylum here. And that's how we got to stay. And we couldn't tell anybody we were permanently leaving. We were going on vacation to the United States. So at 14, to carry that burden of, I can't even tell people what we're really doing, that was hard. And to be taken away from everybody that was familiar and everything we knew, our grandparents, our family, that was hard at 14, right? Think of that. 8th grade, 9th grade. I was in 9th grade. I was in high school, my freshman year of high school. And for a girl, that's even worse. Like you just get ripped out of everything. Anyway, fast forward, we get on Amsterdam airport. It wasn't until mom's funeral and my oldest brother said on stage, he said, hey, do you guys remember when we were on Amsterdam airport and mom took my hand and my brother's hand and left my other brother with my younger sister to watch her? He said, remember when mom took our hand and she said, we're going to go beg for money for food? And I was like, I blocked it out. And when he said that, it just brought tears to my eyes. And that was last year. I was 49 years old, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, like my mom was the strongest woman I knew in my lifetime. And she had no shame. She wanted to provide for her family. Fast forward, we come to the US and it's different from South Africa, right? In 1988, we weren't allowed to use white people beaches. We weren't allowed to use white people bathrooms. And so to come to the US and go to a predominantly white school, Christian school, that was where that really was the biggest shift in my life, because I wasn't a believer. My parents were, and I was church going, but I didn't understand this relationship with Jesus. And I was so angry with God for taking me away from my friends. I was angry with my parents. 8th grade was hard. They put me back into 8th grade instead of a freshman in high school, because they didn't think we could speak proper English, but English was our first language. We were actually bilingual. We could speak both languages. Anyway, they put me back in 8th grade, and 8th grade was horrible. These kids were so mean to me and with an accent and just asking silly questions, but not because they were trying to be mean, but because it was out of ignorance, right? They didn't know. But it hurt me. It hurt me deeply. And I remember thinking, I will never make anybody feel like that. I will never make anybody feel so small. And I made I don't know, the Lord made a little check in my head, a little imprint of this is what you will never do. My parents would always say, when we got here, they said, all I can give you is the opportunity for freedom and equality. And Jesus, that's it. The rest is up to you. And I can proudly say that my parents can look at their lives and their children and say, every single one of the 22 grandchildren are believers. Every single one of their children are believers. Every single one of their children's spouses are believers. So thankful to God that we got to do what they came to do. And it's all by God's grace, and just having parents who are God-fearing and who instilled that. That is the most important, because success is not about money or title, right? Leadership, for example, it's not about how much money you make or your position. This is not a positional leadership thing. Leadership is about influence. It's about building trust. It's about, serving others. And so I took that lesson and I said, I'm going to probably put this away somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do with this at 14. What am I going to do with this? I'm just an immigrant. So fast forward, life happens, and God put people in my life who challenged me and insulted me, but that made me who I am today. But also God put people in my life who spoke great positivity into my life, and told my, especially mom and dad. Mom used to say, because I'm a talker, and mom used to say, oh my gosh, I pray to God someday you're going to make money with that mouth, because the way you talk, she said, it drives me nuts sometimes, but I pray you become rich with that mouth of yours. And you walk on stages and you just fill the room with your laughter and your joy and your charisma, because that's who you are.
Yeah.
And so mom and dad always knew, and here we are. And that's what I get to do.
And that's what you get to do. You have the privilege of doing it today.
I have the
So
privilege of doing it.
we are so glad and blessed that you do as well. And I love that your mother said, I hope you make money using that mouth, right? I mean, you're giving it for a reason. And it's sometimes not everybody will see the gifts we're given as gifts at the time. And it isn't until later that it's revealed how it's a gift. And
Yeah.
so I don't know about you, but when I was in elementary school, I got A's and B's all the way through, but I usually got a B in conduct. And the reason for that was I always had that little note, Amy talks too much, on my report card, right? So did you have also?
Always.
Yeah, I think it's a gift now. I worked for somebody years ago who said he would never hire a straight A student to do sales. And the reason for that is because somebody who's straight A's, yeah, they're smart. Now they're going to be our programmers and our doctors and our rocket scientists. But when you're talking about somebody who's in sales, they need to be these really well-rounded people who can connect with people and who might, skirt along the rules a little bit and take initiative and have some gray area and all of these things. And so what he said was he found that those people who had, kind of a C average, maybe a BC average, made the best salespeople. And I think back to my dad, because my dad was a very successful salesperson and sales leader in his career. And he was a big talker. In fact, he lived back in the day, Leoni, where thank goodness they didn't do this to us, but he would be put in the corner with one of those big dunce hats on his head because he talked so much. So, the gift of gab, I guess it can be a blessing. But
Yeah.
now, how did you form your message?
So how I got to my message was I really honed in on this idea of leadership. What does real, true leadership look like? In eighth grade, I was told that I'm just an immigrant and I'm really not going to amount to anything. And so I fast forwarded that and I said, well, nobody can stop me. If God is for me, who can be against me, right? And that's what my parents always told us. My dad always said, you can do anything, honey. You can do anything you set your mind to, because that's who you are. That's what God wants for you. Then that's what you're going to do. And then I went to school, right? So now you have this formal education on what leadership is and the definitions of it. And then you read and you do all of this research. Fast forward, I worked in corporate, but God would open these doors for me and I would just walk in through, I would pray and God would say yes or God would say no. And we would take that next step. Right. And so as I'm taking steps through my career, the president of Dallas Baptist University approached me because of my daughter and said, hey, I need to meet this mom that's so amazing. Mackenzie says, you're awesome and I want to meet you. Bring me your resume. So fast forward, I take in my resume. By the end of the conversation, he offers me a position at DBU and I become the director of career services. I learned at DBU how to have a conversation and how to connect with the next generations. But at the time, I thought, this is so strange. I'm going to have to sit with this and have the Lord show me why he brought me here. And I believe it was for that, so that I can understand the next generation. I can understand what makes them tick. I was in the thick of it. I was in the center of that campus every single day for 3 years, and it was amazing. We could pray with the students. We could pray over them. We walked the campus. I understood why they do and say and act the way they do on a deeper level. So then I did that. Fast forward, I go into corporate. I eventually became the director of learning and development. And it was a large organization and a global organization. And it was around for a long time, this company, but they didn't have true leadership training and development and people development training in place. And then God brought me into it to actually build it out. But I learned so much at that company of what not to do, what a leader is not. And so there was a part of me that was saddened by how corporate can be, but the opportunity was amazing. At first, there was a lot of pushback, but God opened those doors for me, not man. And because they were not open to it. And God opened those doors through the right people, and he showed me who that was every day. And then in 2023, they laid me off. That's a whole nother story that I will get into probably in a book. And I'm going to talk about corporate bullying because that is such a thing today. It has always been. We just didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
We ignore or we tolerate corporate bullying to get to the next level on that ladder. And but it hurts people and it changes lives at home because people take that mess home. When I got laid off, I realized that God was really setting me up for something way bigger than I can even imagine, right? I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I knew after that layoff, I said to my husband, I didn't even have to say anything. He looked at me and he said, you're going to consult, aren't you? You're going to go solo. And I said, I really feel like that's what the Lord's calling me to next, is to take what I did there and throughout my lifetime and to build programs and leadership programs and training and to get on stages and speak. Like that's what I kept hearing was my mom saying, you're going to be on stages, you're going to speak. But the Lord put that on my heart throughout since I was 14 years old. That's what I always heard. I didn't know how that was going to look. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, immigrant me? There's no way. Rich people stand on stages. Famous people stand on stages. People with money who have entitlement to, generational wealth, they get on stages. Not me. At that point, after I got laid off, I took a month to recover because that really did break my heart. I will say, if leaders are watching this, be careful how you treat your people. It's even at 50, it hurts. When you have given 100%, 150%, and you are treated in a way that is unkind and undeserving. And be careful how you treat people because those people who have influence, who may not have a title, but they have influence, when you treat them a certain way in the workplace, others are watching and it destroys your culture.
A friend of mine and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about, she asked me a question. Actually, it was our very first podcast for the shift. She asked me if I thought people learn better from bad bosses or good bosses. So I'll pose that to you in a moment. But that I think we learn better from bad bosses because I learned what not to say. I learned how not to treat people. I learned what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Leonie, everyone who is very close to me, meaning both of my parents, of course, me, my husband, my daughter, not sure if my son has experienced it, and I pray that he doesn't, but all of the rest of us, we have had those toxic bosses or work environments at one point or another in our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
every single one of us, my parents, me, my husband, my daughter, it impacted our health. So not just physical. So some of the people, and it actually impacted their physical health. But then I've seen how it impacted relationships. I see how it impacts the home life. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. These people, it's like they're playing games with other people's lives just to build up their own ego.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, a lot of times they already have a title. So it's kind of perplexing to me why they would have to treat somebody in the way that we've all experienced, you, me, we've all experienced. It perplexes me and I don't understand it, but it does. It impacts the culture. It impacts the people at home. It impacts their children. And then it impacts the waves just go on and on and on. It's that ripple effect. And so for me, I absolutely decided I wanted to not only do I my goal was to have the exact opposite impact on other people, but it's also to help other people and to teach other people the tools they need to be able to have that positive impact. And like you, I did years of research on leadership and psychology and human behavior and communication. And all of it was at the time I did it so that I could learn because I was curious and I wanted to know and the more I read, the more I wanted to know. You know, my first career as a teacher, I was in corporate training and development for most of the rest of my career. It's kind of like we said, God just orchestrated and ordained the whole thing from the things I went through personally to the things I went through professionally to all of the different roles I had in my life that got me from where I was in 2004, starting off as I was in the early stages of my career as a teacher to where I am today. And this is what he showed me I was going to be doing. But it took all of those things to get here.
So leadership is a very undertaught profession and or study because people are so busy in corporate with the bottom line, the bottom line, the bottom line that they look at, and this is what I've seen even as I consult with these organizations, they look at what we do as a check the box kind of thing. Oh, we need to do that so that we can look like we care. So if we're going to be real, let's get real. I think people do that because they need to check a box so that their employees can see that they are staying in with the times because everybody's now talking about leadership. Oh, everything's about leadership and leaders do this. This is leadership. This is what defines leadership, building trust, emotional intelligence. When I speak to people, it's a whole different story because when they really speak from their heart, they don't give a damn. Sorry about that, but they don't care about what we do. They just want to check the box. And they don't really understand emotional intelligence, therefore they mock it or they belittle what it is. And I think that's a travesty and still is in corporate America. Not everybody, a lot, big chunk of organizations are still not, they still have leadership in place who don't believe in improving in that role. Because to them, it's about the title, the name, the title that they have, and where their office is located, and the power and the authority, and the paycheck. Because I think the real problem with leadership, because I'm going to come back full circle to the question. We have been trained in education in school because I got my master's in HR. We attach money to a title and a job description. And so people who do not belong in leadership because they really don't have a desire to empower and lead others and inspire others or serve others, they want that position for the money and for the title, not for what it truly is, to empower and inspire others to greatness, right? So I think that's why we learn from bad leaders, is because we see how they fail at leading, and we want to be different and we want to be better, and we have such a deep desire because of our past experiences and our past hurts by managers. I'm going to call them, they weren't leaders. We have such deep hurts by it, and we watch the injustices of it. If it's not happening to us, it's happening to the people around us. And so we don't like the injustice of that. We don't like that that's happening. And so people like you and I, we're like, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And we speak up for others. We say other people's names in rooms that they're not in. Like, that to me is true leadership. And so we look at the bad ones. We say, oh, heck no, we are not going to do that. We're going to do the complete opposite, because that is what true leadership is. That's a fundamental issue in corporate America that I think we need to be better at. And so maybe that's what I'm going to go do. I don't know. Like, why not? Change the world.
The tools that got somebody to a leadership position or the level of leadership, let's say management and businesses in corporate America, is a completely different skill set, a completely different set of tools that will make them successful as a leader. So usually what happens is your peak performers, your top performers, your most driven employees, those who you can depend on and who get everything done, who, if you're in sales or something like that, they might be your number one salesperson. Those are the people who often get promoted into leadership positions, at least initially. But if those leaders are still using the same tools that they did, or still doing the same behaviors, taking the same actions that they did when they were a doer, now that they're a leader, they're not going to be successful. I agree with you. There are some leaders who are in their positions for the money, for the name, for the power, whatever. But I do believe there's some leaders out there who just don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Just like there's all types of people in the doer role. There's all types of people in management. There's all types of leaders. But I do think there are some people who truly want to be good leaders. They just don't know how. They didn't have an example. Maybe they only had the bad manager and they didn't do what you and I have both done, which is to flip it around and say, hey, I'm going to do the exact opposite of this. They just said, well, my manager was a micromanage, therefore I must micromanage. Or my manager was heavy-handed, so I have to be heavy-handed. So that could be it too. Either way, some people, you're never going to change their mind. You're never going to convince them to be good leaders or to care for people, empower them, give them autonomy. And those people we really can't help. The old adage is true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And we're not going to reach everybody. But those people who are willing to learn and who are willing to be open-minded to doing something different, those are the ones that I'm after personally, and I believe you are as well. I believe that we're after the ones who we can change for the better. And again, instead of the opposite ripple effect or impact that we talked about with the bad, toxic work environment, we can be a positive force on people for good and see families change that way. That's my goal. That's what I want to do. I've heard people say, I'm so sick of these trainers talking about your why. Well, I'm going to tell you, sister, I will never stop talking about the why. And that is because it is the foundational reason for everything we do. And somebody who isn't self-aware enough to understand how important that is, again, that's one of the people I can't help. But every single day that I get up and I give it my best and I'm out there to help people, the reason I'm out here working like I am every day is because anything I can do to make this world a better place for my kids than it was for me, I am all in. And let me tell you what, anything that I can do for my granddaughter to make this world a better place for her than even it was for my kids or me, that's what it's all about. Is I know
Mm-hmm.
that this world is getting darker and darker and darker. And actually, there's kind of a little revival happening. So I might have to
Uh-huh.
rephrase that some because there is a little revival happening, but we live in a very dark world. And the more people that I can impact and help get to know Jesus Christ, have a relationship with him, then the safer my granddaughter is going to be and the better her world's going to be, however big or small that might be.
The reason it looks like we live in a dark world is because of social media. It's because of technology, right? It's always been a dark world. From the day Eve ate that apple and they discovered they were naked, like that right there became a dark world. We have more exposure to the darkness because of technology, social media, news, the movies, everything is so accessible to us just by flipping the phone up, and now it's like facial recognition. You open your phone and boom, it's there, right?
Right.
And that's what these next generations are really dealing with. I believe that anybody and everybody can change if they want to. I can't change you if there isn't a desire for you to want to change, or that you even acknowledge that change is necessary.
Right.
And that's why I wrote the book on this. How do you lead this multi-generational team? And unfortunately, when you look at these, you break up these different generations, not to put people in a box, but to really help them understand. It's more for understanding's sake. Um, Traditionalists and boomers they thrive on order and hierarchy and schedules, and right, they have a different way of how they've always done business. So to come in and say, you're wrong, you're not doing it right, it's not working, that's not the approach. You have to, again, always win them over. You have to help them understand. You have to shed a light on. So you have to ask them a lot of questions. Tell me more about that. What offends you about that? Right? Like, so understanding, helping them understand why they feel the way they feel about something. Why are you offended by that? Why are you bothered by that? Right? Helping them understand that. I'd say the Zennials, the Gen Zs, and our Alpha coming to a workplace near you as early as 2030, they are the ones who they're going to be the change that we want to see. But it can be positive or it can be negative, but because it's going to take boomers and Gen X and older millennials to say, how do we help them? How do we help them be that change that we want to see? So it's taking both sides and saying, let's reverse mentor each other. You teach me something new, and I teach you something about the business, about professional development, about what's worked for me, what hasn't really worked, and like live in this place of collaboration and effective communication and understanding each generation and why they use the word slay and why do they use the slang, right? Why do they say Riz? And you don't have to speak their language, but you have to understand what they're saying to you. And it only happens when you stop believing that you're right and they are wrong. It can only happen when there's a space where they get to speak freely without being ridiculed or put down. It's called, you and I know this is psychological safety. The next generation wants this. That's what they're asking for. And they are the future because they're 70% of the workplace right now.
Where do you think that line is between adapting to what they need and going overboard with the demands that are being made? And the reason I ask this is because it's a conversation I was having with one of my own clients a few weeks back, where they're noticing that the younger people are making a lot of demands that other generations have never made before. And if they don't have these demands met, then it's negatively impacting either their job, the team, or the retention where these young people are. So there's got to be some kind of balance between adapting somewhat what human resources is doing, or the fringe benefits or the opportunities that they're given, and them understanding that they too have to adapt into a workplace and they're not going to get everything they want. So where's that balance, and how do leaders, to say it again, balance that?
We raised the ones we're complaining about. It's our generation that created this mess that people in corporate are arguing about and complaining about, and they're entitled, and they want their instant gratification. And well, we did that. We're the reason. Our generation is the reason they're like that, because we caved to them when they were little. We wanted to raise them without discipline because we wanted to be their friend, because our parents apparently did it so terribly wrong that we had to change everything that they did and throw it all out, throw the bathwater out with the baby and everything else. And we wanted to do something new and different. And I think it's just coming back and biting us, because we gave them a trophy when they sucked. We told them they were winning when they were losing. We didn't teach them those skills when they were little. Fast forward, they come in and they want instant gratification. They want it now. They don't want to wait 10 years for a career climb. They don't want to wait to climb that ladder. And by the way, they don't want to climb a dumb ladder. They really don't. They want to destroy the ladder, because it's the ladder that allowed or caused mom and dad to stay late. It's the ladder that mom and dad missed. The reason mom and dad missed every ball game or a recital or an award show, because they were so busy climbing that ladder that these kids are like, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not going to be a part of and then they come home and they complain about their job. And so that's what they're coming into corporate with, is I'm not going to be a part of this brainwashing that has been happening all these years. They're going to come in and change it. Now, do we cave? No, we shouldn't cave. We should empower and inspire and teach them, but they're not going to learn from you if you have not done the work to build trust and to empower them. They are not looking for money. That's not their number one thing. Now, do they want it? Yes, but that's not number one. They want to be developed. They know they're underdeveloped career-wise. They know it. But it's our responsibility to now reteach them the skills that we didn't do when they were little, when they were younger. And so it's career development. They care about the world. They care about the environment. They care about sustainability. They care about people. They want to be collaborative. They want to be a part of something bigger, right? And so if you can give them those little things that doesn't really cost you anything, then you're going to get that loyalty. You're going to get that, retention that you're looking for. But when they show us what they want and we just sit back and go, oh, here they go again, asking for things. And, they see us rolling our eyes at them. They hear what we say about them in corporate America, and they will leave their job before they even have a job, because this is the world of the side gig. Yeah. And they will go do something else before they stay in a toxic environment. They're out. They're bouncing.
The number one thing that college graduates are asking for is training and development. And it has been for a number of years, where it used to maybe be time off, or it might have been promotions or money. Like you said, that today it truly is the training and development, the learning that they want to learn. Now, I think there's a couple of things that we can read into that. Number one, I believe that the education system that I was a part of, even when they were young, did them a grand injustice by the No Child Left Behind initiative. It created this world where we were teaching students to take a test instead of to think independently or think strategically or to think rationally. So it was to learn how to take a test instead of learn how to problem solve. And that was one of the biggest things that I think happened. And I believe another thing that happened, Leoni, is you talked about social media, but even before social media got big, we started getting all of these other television stations, and there was the Nickelodeons and the Disney and all of these shows when we were growing up, we were only able to watch cartoons on Saturday mornings, or at least, I mean, for me, because when mom and dad got home, the TV was off limits for me. It was theirs now. So the only time I got my time and the only time they showed cartoons were Saturday mornings. Well, by the time our kids came around, there's now a TV in every room. And then they have shows that are geared towards children. And my entire point in saying all of that is because the shows that were geared towards children were shows that were the kids were in charge of the parents. The parents looked weak. The parents looked naive and dumb. The kids spoke to the parents very disrespectfully. The kids knew it all. And in every single one of those shows, it was the child that was the smartest. So I believe a lot of respect for our elders was lost during those years, and it still is. But I believe the point that you're making that's absolutely valid is there has to be give and take on both sides. That the young people have to understand they're going to have to learn from the, let's say, more tenured people in the organization or in corporate America. But then those more tenured people also have things to learn from the young people. And a lot of it could be technology based, AI, programming, systems, apps, and processes that used to have to be done manually by hand that don't have to be anymore. That's something that the young people can teach the boomers and the Gen Xers in our generation. We have this part of the podcast that's called the Insight Wildcard. What I'm going to ask you to do is to select a number between 1 and 10, and then I'm going to ask you your question.
7.
Number 7 is, what's a piece of advice that you once ignored, but that turned out to be exactly what you needed?
This is more of a theme, I think, than for me.
Okay.
I am so personally and like behaviorally, emotionally, I'm wired to be a complete firecracker. Like I
I can see that.
explode when but it takes a long time. I will give you so much rope to hang yourself with me. And then when you do, I just lose it. Very well aware of that. And my mom used to say, one day you're going to set somebody on fire. It's going to set the whole house on fire. You need to watch what you say. Watch your mouth, which is ironic coming from her because she was the same way.
Yeah. Well, so she probably knew from experience then, right?
And I used to ignore her because I'm like, well, you do the same thing, right?
Right.
And so, but now that I've learned, and I will say I started learning this more in my late 30s, early 40s. Once I really took some introspection and I really did the work with a coach on that emotional intelligence piece, that self-awareness. Once I did that, it really helped me become more successful in everything I did. When you can lift people up instead of break them down to get what you want or manipulate them to get what you want, it changes everything. It changes every relationship. And so I'm so glad I eventually took heed on that piece of advice is watch your tongue. But reading the Word of God and understanding that that really is a sword, it is, it can cut like a knife. And so understanding how important that is to watch my tongue, it has really built a lot of relationships instead of breaking them down. And it has repaired a lot of relationships. So now I don't do that anymore. It's not worth it. I'd rather lift people up.
Our tongue is definitely a weapon that can be used for harm, but it can also, like you said, be used for good to lift people up. So love that you learned that lesson because here you are today teaching it to other people. So Leoni, thank you again so much for being here. If people are interested in learning more about you, working with you, buying your book, tell us how they can find you.
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Leoni Michael 7. Also, I am at leonimichaelconsulting.com. I also wrote the book, and I'll show you a picture of it. So it's this, Bridge the Gap, Lead the Pack. And that's on Amazon. Really, it's anywhere right now. I think we are on Amazon. We're also barnesandnoble.com. Just, Google me, you'll find me, and then put in a request for a free consultation if you just want to chat. I am happy to do that. I know I don't work for free, but trust me, I take every call because I don't know how to say no. And but it's because of my deep love and passion for helping people become a better version of themselves.